In 2014, a 24-year-old Elliot Rodger uploaded a video on YouTube and said that he will take revenge from humanity just before he went to UC Santa Barbara sorority house, and before killing himself, he slaughtered 6 people. He said that for the crime of people having better life than him, so the world deserved that massacre, because at the age of 22 he is still virgin. From all the cruelty of Rodger, he still feel proud. He called himself the perfect guy and the supreme gentleman. He swearing that after he would killed, people would notice that he was the powerful male. He though about himself that God had made him better than the rest of the world's humanity, and also though that people will see him as he was looking for himself. His agony was not just from self-hatred. He had delusions of grandeur, and he though that people not paying him attention, so that's their fault, not him. He said that if women not choose him, so they didn't had the ability of choice because they can't make right decision. In a massive 141-page manifesto, he detailed his vision of an ideal world. He said that where women had no rights and the human sex drive was eliminated. If I cannot have it, Rodger warned, I will do everything I can to destroy it. Someone's bound to say, what were they thinking? Eric Harris wrote in his journal, days before he and his friend Dylan Klebold walked into Columbine High School and killed 13 people. This is what I'm thinking. I have a goal to destroy as much as possible. Harris saw himself as an enlightened person because he saw the irrelevance of life. People will say things like, oh, it was so tragic, he predicted. You think that's a bad thing? Just because your mommy and daddy told you blood and violence is bad, you think it's a fucking law of nature. He saw his massacre as an act of natural selection. Everyone should be put to a test, he wrote, see who can survive in an environment using only smarts and military skills. Those who didn't question conventional values, were unfit for anything at all. Especially life. His journals, the FBI believes, reveal a messianic grade superiority complex. He saw himself as above humanity, like an angel of death sent to decide who deserved to live and die. Harris deemed few worthy to live. The majority of the audience won't even understand my motives, he wrote. They'll say, he's crazy, he's insane, oh well. I wonder if the bulls won. While Harris filed his journal with furious condemnations of humanity, Dylan Klebold's journal was full of poems and a deep longing for some type of human connection. The world is the greatest punishment, life, Klebold wrote in his journal. He'd been cutting himself to kill the pain that he blamed on his inability to get a steady genie friend. Klebold, love was the only path to a meaningful life. In a short poem, he wrote the true great person achieves happiness only when he has met his soulmate. For all he craved human connection, though, Klebold didn't see himself as human. He mused in his diary about when he got covered up by this entity that had taken over his body. In other entries, he called himself a non-human or a god. He believed, the god of sadness. He and Harris, Klebold said, were conceived from ourselves and each other. The rest of humanity were zombies sent as a test to see if our love was genuine. Time to die, time to be free, Klebold wrote, days before the massacre. Time to love. One don't like Mondays. That was the only explanation 16-year-old Brenda Spencer gave. In 1979, she set up a rifle in her San Diego home and opened fire on the elementary school across the street, wounding 8 children and an officer and killing 2 adults. When a reporter asked why, though, all she said was that she didn't like Mondays and that she was bored. This livens up the day. The callous and total lack of remorse in her answer made the phrase a cultural phenomenon, and what little else she said during the attack didn't help anyone understand. When she surrendered to police, she told them that shooting children was like shooting ducks on a pond and that she liked to watch them squirm after they were hit. But despite the detached face Spencer wore throughout her actions, the things she said before she started shooting seemed to hint that there was more that led her to that moment than just boredom. The gun she'd used had been given to her by her father, and she'd taken it as a hint. I asked for a radio and he bought me a gun, Spencer said. One felt like he wanted me to kill myself. Spencer, who had described fantasies of becoming a sniper to her friends and family, told her friends she was going to use the gift for something else. Before she started shooting, she told her friends she had a different motive. Watch the news, she told them, because she was going to do something big to get on TV. What I wanted, Evan Ramsey told a reporter, years after walking into Bethel Regional High School in Al-Aqsa in 1997 and shooting 2 of his classmates with a 12-gauge shotgun, was to get people to leave me alone. Ramsey spent most of his childhood moving through foster homes, most of which were, in his words, fairly abusive. His mother had been a binge drinker, and his first foster father had beaten him with a bungee cord. It took years before he moved in with a mother who took good care of him. Still, Ramsey struggled with bullying at school, and after telling his foster mother about it, he decided to do something about it. She told him to do the mature and adult thing and report all incidents of bullying to the principal, Ramsey told a reporter, before shrugging and adding, "Didn't seem to work. I decided I needed to do something to stand up for myself," Ramsey said. "I chose to kill. I always knew you were going to shoot up the school," Sam Strahan, one of Caleb Sharp's classmates, said in 2017 when he saw 15-year-old Sharp walk into Freeman High School in Rockford, Washington, with a semi-automatic rifle. It was the last thing Strahan would say before Sharp murdered him and injured 3 other students. Sharp told police he'd killed Strahan to teach everyone a lesson about what happens when you bully others. Before his massacre, he'd written "kill" on photographs of 26 students in his yearbook who he'd planned on targeting. The people who know him, though, aren't convinced. "We knew for a fact he wasn't being bullied," one of Sharp's classmates said. Instead, was mental illness. He'd already been seeing a school counselor about his dangerous thoughts, and he'd passed around notes warning that he was planning on hurting people. Sam Strahan wasn't the only one who saw this coming. Some of the things Sharp wrote in his notebooks before the massacre reveal the depths of his madness. Like do.We're, he wrote some of his notes as if he were another entity living in a young boy's body. "I am the one who deserved to live, Booty still need Caleb until I kill all those kids," Caleb wrote, apparently imagining he was possessed by something else. "Then Caleb will finally die while I live on." October 1, 1997, will go down in history as the day I fought back, 16-year-old Luke Woodham wrote before murdering his mother with a butcher's knife and opening fire inside of Pearl High School in Mississippi. "I kill because people like me are mistreated every day. I do this to show society push us and we will push back." He'd spent his life being teased by classmates and taunted by his mother, he claimed, and was tired of watching Johnny football player get the glory. He'd started moving into different circles, joining a clique of self-proclaimed Satanists who encouraged his violent tendencies and, according to Woodham, helped him plan the massacre. To get ready to kill, Woodham crushed his dog's head in and set it on fire. It's hard to say, though, how much of what Woodham says is true. According to the police, Luke had psychotic processing and misinterpreted reality. He claimed his friend Grant Boyd had pushed him into killing, but he also said that he'd seen demons that encouraged him to kill. "He told me I had to kill my mom," Woodham told the police. Woodham didn't object. His mother, he claimed, was one of the people who had mistreated him. "She never loved me. Always told me I wouldn't amount to anything, that I was fat and lazy." Moments later, though, Woodham broke down into tears and told a completely different story. "I loved my mother," he said. "I know she forgives me. There was a deep part of me that just exploded," 8th grader Elizabeth Bush said after she walked into her school cafeteria in 2001 and shot her closest friend, Kimberly Marchese. "TM not normally like that." Bush claimed she'd been bullied by her classmates at Bishop Newman Jr. Senior High School in Pennsylvania. "They'd just call me an idiot, stupid, fat, ugly, whatever," she said. "One incident was I was walking home from school and 5 or 6 kids were behind me and they started throwing stones at me. They were just kind of laughing and I don't know why they were doing this, but they were barking at me." In a fit of depression, Bush started cutting herself. It was a secret she only revealed to Kimberly Marchese. Soon, though, Bush was overcome with a paranoid sense that Marchese had told others. She swore revenge, saying, "I wanted her to know my pain." But Marchese, who survived the attack, thinks everything Bush described was happening in her head. "Bush," she said, wasn't in the best health mentally. She had told Marchese that she was able to talk to God. Despite the fight Bush had imagined, Marchese insisted after the shooting, "I haven't talked to Elizabeth Bush for about a week or two," and there was no argument before the shooting whatsoever. This, to Marchese, was just another one of her friend's outbursts. "I know she sometimes says stuff and then she'll regret it," Marchese has said. "I think that's just what happened to her at the shooting." One needed to do this, Jalen Freiberg wrote in 2014 in his final text message to his family. Moments later, he would walk into his Marysville, Washington, school, kill 4 of his classmates, and commit suicide. He asked his family to apologize to his friend's parents for what he was about to do, saying he needed his crew to come with him. "I needed my ride or dies with me on the other side." A breakup set him off. Days before the massacre, Freiberg's girlfriend broke up with him. In retaliation, he started bombarding her with texts promising he'd ill himself and trying to blame her for it. "Don't bother coming to my funeral," Freiberg texted her. "I set the date. Hopefully you regret not talking to me." In his final message, he told his parents that he loved them but that he wasn't happy to him. His massacre was nothing more than a trip to the other side of existence. He just wanted to make sure his friends were there with him. He murdered 4 people and injured 1 more purely because, in his words, "I didn't want to go alone." "You caused me to do this," Cho Seung-hui said in a manifesto he sent to MSNBC on the day of the Virginia Tech massacre. He was getting ready for a slaughter that would kill 32 people and injure 23 more. "It would be one of the worst school shootings in history. Oh, the happiness I could have had mingling among you hedonists, being counted as one of you," Cho wrote in his rambling, borderline nonsensical manifesto, "if only you didn't fucking the living shit out of me." He accused society of raping my soul and committing emotional sodomy, although he never quite explained what that meant. In part, though, he was furious at people he called descendants of Satan disguised as devout Christians. He saw himself as the Messiah. Like Moses. "I spread the sea and lead my people to eternal freedom," he said. He called Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold martyrs, people who had sacrificed their lives to make society suffer, and chillingly promised that his massacre would set the example of the century for my children to follow. For all his God complex, though, the people who knew Cho saw him as pitiful. A teacher called him the loneliest person I have ever met in my life. In the work he'd handed in, there might have been a clue into what made him this way. He'd written play after play, all about the same thing, young boys being abused by pedophiles.